For me as an artist, it's a great time to be alive. This is the time period when we have all sorts of technology so that we can bring our art form to life. As an artist who primarily draws animals, it's even better for me with my imagination to get inspiration from things that AI art can make immediately. When I found out that AI art could make prompts, like these programs could take inspiration from every art all over the world to make completely original works, I was thrown. As someone who is an artist myself, and also someone who loves telling stories, world building, and making characters, this was revolutionary to me. And I absolutely am so glad that in my generation, I'm alive to see something like this come to fruition, because I thought this would be something people would deem as magical or something that would happen in like the 4,000 year periods, but it's here today. However, I have seen most of the art community become very concerned about this, and I think the only reason they would be that way is because obviously there's money involved, their morality of their art being stolen is a concern. But first thing, let me put that to rest. AI art, when people are saying it's theft, it's not. The people who are saying that, understandably, feel threatened because of their livelihood and the work that they put into as artists. I know personally how daunting that can seem when you look at something that can create a character in seconds, like these creatures. Beautiful. This kind of art would take me a week to do. I like a more simplistic approach. These are some of my animals that I've drawn. These are basically doodles. These are things that did not take me very long to draw. Maybe on digital art, that is. It took me maybe 15 minutes to draw this. These are all my art. I've used combination art. I don't know the exact name for it, but it's when you take elements of other things. For example, this Ghidorah jamming video, I will take inspiration from like snake skin. So the snake skin element I took off of an actual snake skin photo, mix it in with me painting and blending, as you can see on the head, and then I took Spider-Man's webs and I used inspiration of that to place it as the underside of two of the dragons. I made some of the horns myself, but then for the side horns, I took inspiration by taking, like, I think it was a goat's horn or a bull's horn. I warped it and made it straight, but kept the sheen so it could look more realistic. I drew most of the fangs, but there are some teeth there that are actual fangs from other creatures. You can see the mouth of the bottom dragon that is freaking out, the three-headed dragon's Ghidorah. That was taken from the mouth of a snake. And so I mixed and matched different elements to create this work of art. I used a comic background that was available as free clip art on one of those sites. And then I used different elements to put this together to make this. Now, there are filters and different brushes and different plugins that you can use in Photoshop to do something very similar. And a lot of what artists come up with to make their work is inspired by other people's work, but sometimes great minds think alike, and you will have two separate artists that will end up making a very similar rendition of something. Are they stealing the other person's art? The AI programs that are available today are programmed to take what humans find aesthetically pleasing and to use inspiration from the entire catalog of what is available to it. And that's called inspiration. It's not stealing. It's the same way that a lot of artists on DeviantArt will watch other people's art and be like, wow, I like the way that that person drew that wolf. I'm going to do something similar. You took inspiration from that. You took inspiration from something you've seen, like on Balto, Spirit of the Stallion of the Cimarron, The Little Mermaid, Disney, Pixar. A lot of people have these different styles they draw in. And if you were to look at some of the stuff that people have created, you can easily say, oh, your fan art of the Indoraptor from Jurassic Park, that's theft. Because you're taking someone else's IP and drawing something and making, like, you see what I'm saying? It becomes a very slippery slope. And I think the reason why people are so against it at this point is because, number one, there are some assholes out there that are like, look what I drew, and they're pretending that they drew it. And number two, it's a fear of the unknown. People don't like competition. They don't like knowing that something can replace them so easily, and I understand where they're coming from. But the thing is, whether you like it or not, whether you boycott it or not, whether you're against it or not, technology and progression is still going to happen, with or without you. People are forgetting that I was a traditional artist before I went to digital. I was drawing on paper and painting. Like, that was my thing. And I actually did better on painting and paper than I did digital art. I had to relearn because it just felt weird. There's something very intimate about drawing on paper and hearing the sound your pencil makes when it's scratching against the surface of paper than when you just have this smooth thing. I had to get tablets in the past that kind of mirrored that so that I could feel as though I was writing on something. So I have an XP pen tablet, and it's very simple, but now it's very easy for me to draw and see what I'm drawing. I have my iPad Pro, and I also have that little paper film that you can put over the screen so it feels like paper. You can see what you're drawing, but it will never be the same as paper. The truth is, a lot of traditional artists like myself had moved over to digital art because it's so much easier to put your art. Now you have to scan your art and upload it. And the thing is, you're competing against other artists that are using digital technology to make art now. We didn't have filters in that shit when we were writing or drawing on paper. What we had to do, if you wanted to make something look a certain way, you had to use your technique with your hand to make it look that way. You didn't have a brush for scales and petals and leaves. You didn't have that stuff. You didn't have a plug-in for hair. That stuff you had to draw from scratch. And if you wanted to blend things, if you were drawing, you had to do that little smudge thing with the tip of your finger. You know exactly what I'm talking about. You remember the smudge? You had to do all of that. And now it's so easy. How people who were traditional artists that probably didn't have computers probably thought that digital art was like competition for them, because they're like, wow, this person can draw a lot easier. Like, if I make a mistake, I have to erase it, or I might have to throw it away and retrace it. It's so much more work than doing it digitally. People adapted though. Artists moved over to digital stuff, and they were doing that. But then when all the plugins started coming out to facilitate them using this, now you can copy, instead of you actually drawing horns from scratch or having a trace. Now if you want a horn, you can take a clip or a picture of something online with a horn, like a goat. You can cut it out and you can place it into Photoshop and warp it and add filters like a clip covering over it, or a clip mask. I mean, there's this guy on YouTube, I don't remember his name, but I love his work, and he basically takes people's drawings that, you know, don't look professional or whatever. I don't like saying that because I feel like anybody who draws, that's your expression. But people who aren't as good drawers as he is, as artists. And he will use so many different elements to make their drawings look real. And a lot of what he doesn't draw it himself. He'll take shapes from many different things online. And I've done that with my art as well. I've drawn much of my creatures from scratch, but a lot of them, it's fun to take different elements from different things and make something different. This example of art that I did, I took a Parasaurolophus, and I took out all the color. I just took the general outline shape of it, and then I took like the eye of a cat or a goat or something, and then I blended the rest. And then I took some colors or like the skin of a lizard, smoothed it out. Like, I used different elements to make this picture here. And this was a very simplistic way of making art, but it's still art. Like other things I had to do, like the human arts that I have on my old profile, I had to trace, and I felt so guilty because I don't know how to draw humans as well as animals. I'm really sucky at that. It would take me a long time, and I do have to find a pose or two different poses and kind of trace over them. And then if I want the arm in a different position because I don't want it to look like the exact pose that the other person's art is in, I'll have to find another arm that's stuck out near the same position. And I talked to other artists, and they said, you know what they said to me? Oh, there's no shame in that. We all do it. I'm like, really? They're like, yeah, we trace. And I'm like, oh, that's allowed? They're like, yeah. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't know that, because I was always like, tracing is horrible. Like, if you can't draw it from scratch, you're horrible. But what is art? Art is an expression of what you want to portray. So as long as you're not like straight up copying someone else's art, there's nothing wrong with it. There are people who have done fan art of my character. They're not copying me. Like, they copy the style of it. The way that they draw my character, it's their own expression of my character. That's not stealing. Now, what would be stealing is if they're like, this is my character, my original character, when you know damn well it's my original character. There's no other character that looks like this. Like, it's it's very clear. Like, oh, all the feathers and the stuff, and they're in the same place. People can look at your character and be like, oh, that OC belongs to this person. So that is something that is very important. Like when I was new on YouTube and I did a little comic thing, I credited some artists and I told them, hey, come look at what I did with your character, the horse character. I gave the horse character a different name, and it was like casting for me. But that artist had gotten so offended. She's like, no, I have a backstory for all these characters. They're my original characters. You're not allowed to take them and make them into other characters. And at first I didn't understand why she was upset. But then as I grew as an artist and I learned etiquette online, I understood why she was so upset about that. Technically, I wasn't stealing from her because I did say, hey, this character belongs to this person. And I wasn't making money off of it, so technically there's nothing really wrong with the way I was doing it. It was transformative, but I do understand when you have your original characters why it is so important, why it's so near and dear to people. Like, you can't just take someone's original character now and start doing shit on your own channel with it. That's stealing. So I understand that. And then when the AI thing came out, people started freaking out because it was this leap in technology where they're like, this looks a lot like, other people's art. But if you look on DeviantArt or Instagram, or any of those art sharing sites, it starts to meld together. People have similar styles. You look at 3 different artists and their work looks identical to another artist you were just following. Is that stealing? Can you say that this person who made this blue-haired dragon stole from another artist who also made a blue-haired dragon? It doesn't make sense, right? That aspect of it is not stealing. Also, they're not taking people's art. They're taking elements about art and making original stuff off of it. There's AI programs that these same people will use. They're called plagiarism detectors. And you will see an essay, because trust me, I know people have done it because I've talked to people who have done it. And let's say you want help writing an essay, right? And you're like, all right, well, I'll look at what my friend did and write something similar, but change it up enough. Like if they say something along the lines of, The Little Mermaid was an iconic movie. Ariel learns to be responsible, which she doesn't really in the movie. I'm just using an example. And you see your friend write this and you're like, all right, I'll just change it up. The Little Mermaid is a stellar movie. I enjoyed that movie. And the reason why is because you have this mermaid named Ariel. And her father puts a lot of responsibility on her, which she learns in the end. I'm saying exactly the same thing. But the teacher can't say that you copied off your friend because it's a different type of presentation. They have AI programs that can detect whether or not you plagiarize something if it's different enough or the elements are different enough. It can even rewrite that stuff for you so that it's different. But people still use that and nobody bats an eye about that. As a matter of fact, teachers are okay with that. So it's very strange now that people pick and choose when they feel threatened about something what is dangerous. It sounds like those freaking religious people that they see science progressing and they're like, oh my God, people are not going to want to come to church now because they explained gravity now. And it's like, you burning the books or burning people at the stake does not stop science and technology from progressing. It's giving very Salem's Lot. The next issue is like people saying AI artist theft, and like this person, I have another DA profile specifically for my prompts. And I even put in my about page when I started it, a place for art from my prompts. Prompts are basically what you tell the AI programs what you want to make and see what they pop out with. And the beautiful thing about it is you can share this because whether people like to admit it or not, it is still art. It's still classified as art. Somebody wrote to me and said, please tag your AI image appropriately. I've chosen not to see this content on the front page, but your lack of appreciate tagging means we are given no choice. Block me then. Block me. Don't force me to tag anything. Most of the time, I will only tag what the creature is. People go there to see art. You can see I'm not hiding the fact that it's AI. It's very clear in some instances, if you look at it, that it's AI. Most of the people who follow this specific profile know that it's AI. So I did reply to the person. I'm like, excuse me, because I didn't know what the hell they were talking about. This person's like, excused, you're excused. Now please tag your AI images properly. So those of us who wish to filter out the stuff won't see it anymore. And I basically told them, the fuck? You can block me. Don't tell me what the fuck to do. That's very fucking rude. You know what I mean? Like, you look on some of these people's profiles who are like, oh my God, block the art, blah, blah, blah. But yet, they will have pictures up on their profiles from TV shows or things that are clearly not their art, but they're not tagging that as, oh, this is this other show. They will not tag that appropriately. They will have their profiles up there mixed in with their art, other people's art that they like, that they re-uploaded to their DeviantArt profiles. Yes, I'm calling people out. But did they tag that this was this person's art? No, you'll just happen to see this, or someone in the comments will be like, oh, this is this other person's art though. Yeah, isn't it great? Someone says. Why didn't you tag them? You're straight up re-uploading somebody else's art from DeviantArt or another website and not tagging it. You know what I mean? Like, hypocrite much? But I did look at this person's thing and it's clear they're like, no to AI generated images. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, look, I get why you're threatened, but this isn't going to do anything. AI is not theft. I don't know where people are getting that from. Because if you match up most of the pictures, at least from Midjourney, which is what I primarily use, you cannot find anything that looks identical to this. You may find where the AI has taken inspiration from things, as human artists often do, and make their own original concept of it. That is not the same thing as theft. And it's funny, like, I found an OP on Reddit that basically says exactly this. And I'm going to read what they said. Their name is Lavender Midwinter. And as an artist, I disagree with this person saying to boycott AI-generated images. Anybody watching who doesn't believe in that, sure, whatever. But just keep in mind that traditional painters, when photography came out, they looked down on that. They were like, wow, you can just snap a picture of what takes me hours and days to, like, if you want to get a portrait of someone or a landscape and paint it, it takes you days to do that painting. And now this technology comes out where you can just click and you immediately have that picture, that whole picture, the person's still painting on the 6th day, and you just in seconds snap that picture. Tell me, where does it end? Well, the Photoshop plugins that we use to make things look different that are technically, yeah, they're programs, they're technology. A lot of these filters or plugins are AI generated. The smart filters where you can tell what faces are to liquefy them and bend and warp the eyes and mouth. People are using that. That's AI technology. Nobody bats an eye about that though. But then they pick and choose what they think they should be offended by. But this person's post reads as this: AI art is not theft. Many artists are currently holding AI to a higher standard than they hold their fellow humans when it comes to quote-unquote stealing art. While things like plagiarism and copying can exist within creative works, artists and writers tend to agree on certain standards of what constitutes theft generally. They agree if things are transformative of the original work or a different interpretation of the same style, as I explained earlier in the video, they do not count as theft. If a human created a new interpretation of the Mona Lisa or something done in the style of an existing artist like Van Gogh or Marguerite or Dali, it is not considered theft by the artistic community. And the community does not find it necessary to credit every influence or style originator that may have contributed to the creation of their work. These standards should apply equally to AI-created art. I think the view that AI art is theft mainly comes from misunderstanding how AI creates the images or what current artists take for granted when it comes to the creative process, or mere frustration with the ease in which new images are created. To avoid strawmanning, I'm going to refute the POV expressed by one artist here. And then they share the link to this person's, like them showing what was going on or what that person was saying. But then, in summary, the OP continues. Generally, she believes that an AI trained on her artwork and utilizing her style counts as theft. But humans do the same thing. Humans, if tasked with making something of a certain style, will train their brains by looking at images from within that style and then try to replicate it. I have done this. Other artists have done this. Most of the artists that I see that do, this is not the OP talking, this is me talking. Most of the artists on DA that I see make dogs or animals, they usually do it in the style, especially those who grew up watching these movies. They do it in the style of either The Lion King, Balto, Spirit of the Stallion and Cimarron, Disney. Any of those major animal-oriented styles that those studios put out, of those movies put out, they do them in that style. The way that they draw the paws, the first time I've seen the paws actually been drawn in a certain way with an angular toe is in Balto. And there's a lot of people, a lot of artists on DA that I've followed that love Balto, and every single one of their canine creatures or or original characters look like that. They look like they're drawn in the style of Balto. Their dogs or their wolves look like Balto. You can tell. Nobody says anything because it's their original interpretation using that style. So continuing what the OP says. This is the same thing that AI does. People reproduce artwork from their memory of how things look and how certain art styles look. For example, if an artist wanted to make something in steampunk art style, for example, they'd Google steampunk, go to images, get an understanding of the style, and make their own creation, or just go off of their memory of what the style looked like. Same thing that I've done. If a person took an image from Google, copy-pasted an unmodified part of an existing artwork into a work, then that would rightly be considered as theft. If that person merely used a part of an existing image or as inspiration or a model to draw their own version of, which I said earlier, that is not considered theft. That is transformative. The way neural networks work is by the latter. If any writer can find me a good example of something blatantly copied off of an existing artwork, that would do a great deal towards changing my view. So far, all I've seen is unique images in a similar style to existing ones, which is the same thing I have seen. Because I was even like, you can do that thing where you can either use a third-party program or the Google Lens situation to kind of look at if there's a similar or the same image being copied. So you can say, wow, this image here is exactly identical to this one here. You copied that. So far, since I've been using Midjourney and DALL-E, I have not seen that. I've seen things inspired by, but you know what also does that? Every other artist on DA. It's so weird, right? Continuing on from what the OP is saying. She believes AI ought to get permission from the creator in order to be trained on her style, but this isn't a normal standard for anyone creating art. No one needs to dig up Da Vinci if they want to make Renaissance style art. No one needs to get permission from Osamu Tezuka to draw something anime or manga. Andy Warhol doesn't even need permission from Campbell Soup to create this. And the person adds another image. If you guys want to follow along with the post or see the links to what he's talking about, he or she's talking about, I will link the actual Reddit post to this video. Style, as the OP continues, is not owned by anyone within a creative community, and people asserting ownership over a style is usually laughed at by those within the creative community. AI art generators are merely doing what human artists currently do, but on a superhuman scale. And this is me talking now. This is important to note, because a lot of people who are bitching and getting on this bandwagon of AI is theft, they're being told by people like Key Feathers here that, oh, this AI, it's training off of these people's art and stealing, but it's not though. Even if it's taking inspiration from it, you do the exact same thing with other artists. And even if you don't and you think you've made it up in your head and this is a completely original style, there are millions of people that are not you who have been doing the style a lot longer. So let's not kid ourselves here. Even I, another artist, knows that shit. So continuing what the OP's post is saying. I will acknowledge one legal exception I think should apply equally to humans as it does AI. Using copyrighted characters in stories is rightly considered theft. You can have an AI or human design a Star Wars scene, and Disney can legally send you a cease and desist to not display the artwork. But they do not have a monopoly on space opera or space Western art styles. So to expound on what the OP is saying here, if you make fan art, whether you're human or AI, and you try to sell it and be like, look at this, oh my god, check this out, freaking Darth Maul over here, Disney can be like, that's our character, can you stop? If you try to make Darth Maul blue, but he still looks exactly the same, with a different backstory, sure, you can say it's transformative, but you can't sell the work, it's still that person's character. There's enough of a similarity with an iconic character like Pikachu, changing two of his stripes to be blue, but it's still Pikachu, it's still iconic, you could still tell that's an original character, and you're then trying to sell t-shirts with that, yeah, you're it's a slippery slope right there. But if you're just making art to share, and you're like, look, this is Pikachu in the style of Fern Gully or something, that's transformative. Continuing from the OP's post. For this exception, I think artists acknowledge the legal reality of the situation, while also in their own minds categorizing fan art that's drawn by taking inspiration from the existing Star Wars universe as original and not considering it as stolen. A counterexample that would help change my view is providing an an example of scandal within the artistic community, where the artistic community had a consensus that artwork was stolen from another person side by side with an artwork stolen from an existing artist by an AI in a similar way. If we have plagiarism programs that can avoid plagiarism and make things different enough for it to be its own original thing, it is exactly the same thing with images. Nobody cared about the plagiarism aspect of it because people use it for school, and most of us artists go to school and we're like, oh, this is great, this helps me. But the minute it becomes competition or threatening because of the facilitation and how it directly kind of sobers the reality that you can be replaced as an artist, which I don't see that happening at this moment, then that's when people get a little bit more vocal. When all the AI plugins were coming out to help people make their art much easier and faster than a traditional artist, nobody fucking cared. The traditional artists were probably like, oh my god, they were bitching about it. But enough people were using this stuff that they couldn't fight against it. So they're like, I just have to get with it or just stop doing art. But when it's something that's like, now it's something that can replace these people, they get viscerally defensive of it. And I understand where they're coming from. I do understand where they're coming from. If my livelihood was making original characters, like I actually financially depended on that, I don't. I do it as a hobby. I love doing it. I do it for my stories. But if I was making money off of that, and then this thing came out along the time I was making money off of it, oh yeah, I'd be afraid, as people in my country would say, about go twit twit. Like, you are freaking scared, because now it's like, are people even gonna pay me to make original characters now when they can just put in a prompt, pay $30 a month and get as many different things as they want? Me as an artist, I love to draw. I love to draw original characters. My imagination is so filled with things that can't come out fast enough. It's the curse of being an INFP. But I also see this and I'm like, wow, technology is amazing. Now, all the characters I have in my head to tell stories, I don't have to spend hours drawing them. Now I can make a character, make a scary bear character, and I can make that and use that for my stories. It's beautiful. I love it. And that's what my whole channel of Ontorium is about. Even if I wanted to make an original character, I can still use inspiration from the AI to make my original character. And then if I want to, or I have the time to, I can sit down and try to paint that, and it would be mine. So I guess it's the half cup, half empty kind of situation. I think a lot of it is also insecurity. People are like, well, no one's gonna want to see my art now that the AI is there. And bad people make it worse for everyone else, because you have assholes that are like, yeah, I drew this. You did? Yeah. And they're like, okay. Then you're trying to go into competitions, and it's like, okay, now you have to set certain rules for competitions, because I understand how that could be annoying. You can say, okay, because DeviantArt even asked me, hey, do you want to enter a competition on my AI profile? And I ignored it because I'm like, why would I want to do that? That's not a competition. Now, if it's an AI competition for who can generate with your prompts the best AI, because you still need human input to make what you want. You can't just be like, all right, make me a bear, and then this freaking thing comes out exactly the way you want it. You have to put in specific elements of the prompt with your words, using your word and descriptors and styles that you want to make it look a certain way. So there still very much is a human element. And if you want it to look a certain way, you can take different pictures from the AI prompts and then blend them together to try and make something in Photoshop. That's still a human element. But because of the quickness in which you can achieve this, it wouldn't be fair to, I guess, put it with other humans, that even though they come out with similar styles, you know. And then there was that whole thing with the guy who won with his AI thing, but there was no rule saying that you couldn't use AI. So then we go to that other slippery slope. If AI is not allowed to make art if you're entering an art competition, does that mean filters in Photoshop and plugins in Photoshop as well? Because that uses a lot of AI to detect certain things and know what you're doing, the smoothness. Like, there's a lot of AI component that people ignore when it comes to plugins and filters and different things that you can use in Photoshop or these other art programs. But those are okay, right? Models that you can use that come with certain libraries, dogs, you know, there are AI programs that I've looked up where you can use certain animals and pose them in a certain way, and then you can copy that and put it into Photoshop and then color with it. as opposed to drawing it from scratch. Like, where do we draw the line here? Because it's either you're all against AI or you cherry pick which part you want. Is it just the prompt AI you don't want, but you're still going to use something that can generate landscapes that you can plug into Photoshop and you only have to add little things here and there? There's another program I used where it draws landscapes for you, like dead ass. Like, you can say, I want to draw a meadow with rocks and mountains in the background. And you can actually draw, like, use your tablet pencil and draw, and it draws rock. You can select rock and it will just generate rock and then generate stuff in the back. And then you're like, oh, this is great. And then you put it in any which way you want. Is that not AI is theft? You could still enter that in our competition and be like, well, technically I drew it. No, you didn't. No, you didn't. This program was whenever you selected rock, whenever you put your brush to the tablet, your pencil to the tablet, it drew rock. Different versions of it. You can choose to go up and down and circle it and do different things like that. You choose leaves. The brush turns into leaves and you didn't draw that shit. What would take a traditional artist probably months to make in terms of all the details of landscape, with a plugin or an AI plugin or filter, you can draw that in seconds. But that is allowed, but the AI prompts are not. Make it make sense. All in all, I think that I understand that visceral fear of being replaced as artists, and people thinking that AI art is not art. I understand that's their opinion, but I think what we need to do as artists, I've embraced it, because I know that me being afraid of it and me being upset about it and trying to boycott it, I'm just going to get left in the dirt. What I, as an artist, am trying to do right now is saying, okay, how can I use this to express art better? I use it to tell stories. That's how I do it. I love writing stories. I love world building. I try to see how can I incorporate, this is the way technology is going. It's not going to stop. People are not going to see all the artists bitching about it and be like, oh my God, their feelings are hurt. They think AI art is theft. All right, time to hang up the curtain and just close down Midjourney and close down AI art. Let's move on to another project that's using AI, because, music now uses AI. Now you don't need song artists. You just have to have a pretty face and use freaking auto-tune to be able to sing, and that's fine. Like, where do we draw the line here? It's so stupid. Get with the program. Literally find a creative way. I know a lot of these artists are creative because I've seen their work. The fact that you can't tell the difference between a robot creating art and your art is actually a compliment. And try to find a way that you can utilize this to bolster your art. I don't know how, but find a way to do it. I'm doing stories. Use the inspiration. Use some of what you generate through these AI things and then bring it into Photoshop and build upon it. Guess what? It's still yours. Even if you use 99% of the AI prompt that you put in and then you just change it by putting like ears on it or something, it's still your art. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can be honest with people and say, hey, I generated this from prompts. Or you don't have to be unless someone asks you. It's still art. It's still an expression. If you take a bunch of leaves with some freaking glue and eggs and powder, you throw it up into the sky, and then you watch it fall down, and it makes a pattern, it's still art. People can splash dots on a white piece of paper and sell it for millions of dollars. It's still art. You know what I'm saying? Like, at what point do we stop gatekeeping what is art and what's not? Because the amount of things that people have said is art, that I personally am like, it is. Okay, it's their expression of something they made and they see something in. They took a garbage can and they painted it blue and they sold it for thousands of dollars, a garbage can. It is still art. Okay, but you get to gatekeep what is art and what is not, because it was made by a program that used only the element of someone putting in a prompt. Whereas for the longest while, people have been using AI or technology to create their art. And the only thing they do is make the line look a certain way. But when it comes to filling in the colors and the shading and the blending and the brush tools and the filters and the warping, they're able to do all of that utilizing technology. And it becomes a point where the art that you see generated, a lot of it is made by the computer element, not by the actual human. But because the human element is still in there, it's still their art. And even if a robot were to come out, like, let's say robots, right? That's where I'm against Elon Musk with this. Because let's say AI becomes a thing and robots are now self-aware. And the robot creates art. It sees the interpretation, has it stolen anyone's art, makes something completely completely original based off of the interpretation of things that it's seen. It's like, oh wow, these are wolves, these are pretty, I want to make my own wolf. And it makes a wolf that looks like many other wolves, but it's an original wolf. And the AI robot has intelligence now, is self-aware, and it enters an art competition. And, you know, people are like, ew, your art is not art because you're a robot, freaking robot. And it's like, well, that's racist. So you're saying that what I create isn't art just because I'm not like you? Like, that's kind of where we're going. And if we're not careful and we have this mindset of Salem's Lot when it comes to AI technology, the freaking Terminator is going to happen. That's exactly what's going to happen. I just think people are being silly. It's understandable why they're being like that, but then don't lie. Just say that you're threatened by it and you're afraid, like many of the artists do. Many of the artists, they come forward and they say, I'm scared. My livelihood is making things for people. And even if you try to assuage them and say, it's okay, people still want a certain thing and the AI can't do that, very soon it will be able to. Let's not kid ourselves. It will be able to. And then people are wondering, well, if that's the case, then what is the point of making art? Because the AI is going to be able to make art either, you know, the appreciation of humans that they have for it. And the ability to hone in the prompts of the AI. The AI can make 1,000 different things. And so can you. But it's going to still happen. This isn't going to stop me from creating my characters. Now what I'm going to do is world building with these characters. And making these characters look different. Like if I have a style of wolf, I want the wolf to be wearing a jacket. AI will get that good where it can do all that stuff. But if you say, this is the character I want to build and how I want it to look, the human element is still there to describe exactly how you want that character to look. That thing that was in your head that you want the AI to create, that becomes your art. So I think it's just a way of looking at it. And regardless, it's still going to continue without you. Fire, brimstone, burning, and preaching for its destruction is not going to stop it. It's only going to accelerate it. So my fellow artists, don't be afraid. This is what has always happened when it comes to progress and change with everything that we have today. We would not have our phones or fancy tablets had that not happened and put other people out of business. Every time something happens, people get put out of business. The machines that make our cars and our toys and all the stuff that we like, somebody had to be put out of business for it. And it sucks. That is just a sacrifice of progression and advancement in technology and science. As for the people who make their livelihood of this, start trying to find another way to implement whatever you can. World building, story writing, AI hasn't gotten its hands on that yet. Try to find that. Find presentation, because what people are doing now when it comes to the music industry, which has basically been replaced by AI with a lot of things, a lot of people out there can't actually sing. Well, what do? Aesthetics, presentation. How does this person look? How do they present themselves when they're performing? That's why they're just called artists now, not song artists or singers. Because a lot of them aren't. So if you can find a way to implement the change in your own life to grow with the advancement of technology, you will not die out. You will not suffer for it. Capitalize off as much you can right now and then find a different way like everybody else has done. Adapt. If you cannot adapt with changing technology, it will not slow down for you or feel bad for you. You will get left behind. Anyway, feel free to say whatever you want. Have a civil conversation in the comments. Please don't attack each other or attack me. You know, I mean, you can attack me if you want, whatever. It's a free country. But I don't see what is going to come of that. If you want to just vent about how you're concerned or actual things that you've seen, then feel free to do that. But this whole misinformation thing that's going out about, you know, like AI stealing other people's stuff, no one's been able to provide proof of that yet. Like, I don't understand. Anyway, I'll see you guys in the next video.